Tonight on Reporting Scotland, cancer patients in our most deprived communities are up to 98% more likely to die from some forms of the illness than those from affluent areas.
40% of us are going to have a cancer diagnosis in our lives. And the earlier that diagnosis happens, the more chance of treatment. And now, with modern techniques, often cure.
We'll ask why some people aren't getting that early diagnosis. Also in the programme, scientists say there could be reserves of oil and gas in previously dismissed areas around Rockall. We speak to the footballer fighting to save his career after betting on his own team to lose games in which he played. And in rugby, struggling Edinburgh appoint a new head coach to try to improve their fortunes. Good evening. A cancer survival gap is growing between people living in the most and least deprived parts of Scotland, depending on the type of cancer they have. That's the warning from Macmillan Cancer Support, which says there needs to be better awareness of screening in poorer parts of the country. Here's our health correspondent, Lisa Summers.
In Govan, this cafe for the local community also doubles up as a drop-in centre for cancer patients. Many people who come here don't have cancer, but for those who do, it provides vital support. Mandy and Pauline are both local and living with terminal cancer.
If you're feeling a bit lost about what help's available, there's people here that know exactly, they deal with it day in. I think it's just, at 35, I didn't know what help there was.
Well, unfortunately lost my job through cancer. And that's where it became very, very important to me, because I knew there was somebody there that I could phone if I needed anything, if you know what I mean.
Local informal services like this one seem to be making a difference, but across the country, the analysis paints an alarming picture.
Macmillan looked at cancer survival rates over a 5-year period and found quite startling variations for those living in poor communities compared to those living in our more affluent communities. So, for example, with prostate cancer, you're 98% more likely to die if you live in an area of deprivation, and with breast cancer that figure was 89%.
I think they are shocking, and I'm hoping the shock of it will help galvanise us doing something proactive.
These days, lung cancer doesn't have to be a death sentence.
Adverts like this one with Alex Ferguson are part of a targeted campaign. They have been successful, but the government's National Clinical Director says he's not surprised by the data.
Late presentation is simply a matter of life and death. Cancer is going to hit 40% of us. 40% of us are going to have a cancer diagnosis in our lives. And the earlier that diagnosis happens, the more chance of treatment. And now, with modern techniques, often cure.
GPs say there can be complex reasons that discourage people from poorer areas seeking out help.
Things like financial resources, ability to physically make a GP appointment, communication issues such as not having English as a first language, education about what really needs to be seen is important too, and perhaps even just the likelihood of pushing your GP for that appointment if you're told there are none left.
This cafe is a success story. 77% of its users come from deprived areas. But the fundamental question is still unanswered: how to get people to seek help earlier. Lisa Summers, Reporting Scotland, Govan.
MPs are debating whether a state visit to the UK by President Trump should go ahead. More than 1.8 million people signed a petition arguing he wasn't wanted. But hundreds of thousands have since signed a counter-petition arguing that, as America's president, he's entitled to come.
I think it's difficult to know whether to be appalled at the morality of this invitation or just astonished at the stupidity of the invitation. As an example of fawning subservience, if I could disagree with my honourable friend for a second, the Prime Minister's holding hands across the ocean visit would be difficult to match. To do it in the name of shared values was stomach-churning.
We are dealing with a president who is the first non-politician and the first non-serviceman to be elected to the office. He is definitively different. And in an exercise of pressing the right buttons to engage him, I think dangling a state visit in front of a half-Scottish President of the United States, whose mother has an immense attachment to the country, was a very successful use of the kind of soft power that the United Kingdom has.
Geologists say there could be reserves of oil and gas in areas around Scotland's coast which have previously been dismissed. A team has been studying rock formations around Rockall, a tiny outcrop 300 miles off the Western Isles. Our energy correspondent Kevin Keane has this exclusive report.
Come on, he's on the rock. He's climbing up. Go on, Nick!
It's been an attractive destination for only the hardiest of adventurers. And 3 years ago, Nick Hancock broke the record for the most time spent on Rockall. But now the focus is not so much on the rock above the waterline, but on the ones below.
What you're hoping is that the oil and gas has been trapped within that bump.
Geologist Nick Schofield has been studying seismic data from below the seabed, and he's made a surprising finding. Previous attempts to strike oil here have almost all failed. Now he's concluded they were looking in the wrong place.
That's why people kind of, looked at other areas where, like North Sea, where you'd probably drill you get one discovery for every 3, 4, 5 wells you would drill. So that was one of the things that led to the kind of the preconception of it not having anything there. But we think the wells could have possibly not been drilled in the right place.
His team has also been studying rock formations on Skye, which are similar to the Rockall Basin.
On the right, you can see.
With all the data, they now conclude that volcanic activity may have pushed any oil reserves away from the rock itself, much further than where previous wells were drilled. So what does that mean?
It's certainly an encouraging area. There's encouraging elements in that area, so I think we're optimistic, but we're also always very, very cautious, and it's a very frontier area, and it's a very challenging place to work, and it's potentially in the future going to be quite exciting, but I wouldn't get too enthusiastic just yet.
The oil and gas industry has long been looking for new frontiers. The Clare Field and others have seen production expanding into the harsher waters of the North Atlantic. So there are challenges and opportunities.
I'm confident that there are companies looking very carefully at the information already from the seismic, and indeed the information the study will provide for them also. There'll not be a Klondike or rush here. This is a very expensive area to play in, but the right companies with the right backings behind them will be looking hard at the outcomes.
This is the first significant discovery from a 2-year seismic study at Aberdeen University. With 18 months to go, the geologists say there could be more surprises to come. Kevin Keane reporting, Scotland.
One of the leading charities representing survivors of child sex abuse has been told it hasn't been granted official representation at the inquiry set up by the Scottish Government. Wellbeing Scotland says it's concerned more than 1,000 victims, which it has helped, will now be deterred from giving evidence. Well, our social affairs correspondent, Rival Alderson, joins me now. Rival, so what does this mean potentially for those victims?
Well, Wellbeing Scotland, Jackie, formerly operated as Open Secret, and it says it isn't being granted core participant status in this inquiry. Now, what does that mean? Well, it has appealed against it, but core participant status allows an organisation and its members to receive financial and legal assistance and to cross-examine witnesses in the inquiry. The charity says it's the largest organisation in Scotland dealing with historical allegations of child sex abuse and has helped 1,058 people. It says it was concerned that new guidelines, which meant that any perpetrator named in the inquiry would then be told that that had happened. They feel that that could deter many survivors from coming forward. Therefore, it was imperative that it, as a charity, should be able to take part fully in the inquiry. And it pointed out that one Catholic organisation has got core participation status. Wellbeing Scotland says that it's been left wondering whether the inquiry was concerned at the size of its organisation, 1,058 members, meant that it would cost a lot more and perhaps elongate the inquiry, which is due to report in late 2019. The inquiry itself said that Wellbeing Scotland hadn't met the stringent criteria for organisations to play a significant role in proceedings, but that was now being reviewed, Jackie.
Rival, thank you. Floral tributes and messages of sympathy have followed the death of a 2-year-old boy whose body was recovered from the River Erith at the Bridge of Cally near Blairgowrie in Perthshire. The child was reported missing yesterday morning from a property in Milton of Drimmy. He was found just over an hour later by a fire and rescue crew after an air and ground search. Police have been searching the roadside near an Aberdeenshire village as part of an ongoing investigation into the murder of Brian McCandy. The 67-year-old was found beaten to death with a heavy weapon in his home in Rothy Norman on the 12th of March last year. Police say the search isn't in response to new information. A footballer says he's fighting to save his career after admitting betting on his own team to lose games in which he played. Dean Brett is currently suspended by Cowdenbeath and is to be charged by the Scottish Football Association for placing thousands of bets. The player, who's come through recent personal tragedies, is hoping for mercy. Alistair Lamont reports.
Dean Brett at home with his dog Messi. It's been a rough couple of years in the Brett household, with the death firstly of a baby daughter, and just a few months later, Dean's partner Gemma died of cancer.
It's just been tough moments, and when you see something that reminds you of it, it's really tough. Anniversaries, birthdays, events that happen in other people's lives that can relate to you. You know, you feel yourself getting upset about that, and it's tough.
Even before those tragedies though, Brett had made no secret of betting on football, despite knowing it was against SFA rules. His social media posts eventually came to the authorities' attention. Dean Brett will eventually be called here to Hampden to answer charges that he placed 2,787 bets on a total of 6,369 matches. Cowdenbeath say most concerning for them are the figures of 65 of their matches, 8 of which were on Cowdenbeath to lose. Dean Brett played in 5 of those games.
Since I went home on Thursday, I was just daydreaming, just thinking like what happens here, because I didn't want to leave Cowdenbeath, and I've had the opportunity before, but I've always wanted to stay with them, and now that I've let them down, for them to release me, you know, I'll be gutted, but I'll just need to accept it, because what I've done is it's not acceptable, and if that's the way they go, then fair enough.
Of the other players who've fallen foul of the SFA's rules on gambling, only Ian Black had bet against his own team. He served a 3-match ban and was fined £7,500. None bet on as many games as Brett, who faces a club disciplinary hearing tomorrow. None, though, has experienced the personal trauma Brett has. Not an excuse, but a poignant twist to a tale of human frailty. Alistair Lamont, reporting Scotland.
It's 18 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. Cancer patients in our most deprived communities are up to 98% more likely to die from some forms of the illness than those from affluent areas. And still to come, the research into the cells in our bodies that could transform the treatment of diseases like diabetes. Campaigners for disability rights continue to raise concerns about the way the Department of Work and Pensions has tried to modernise the benefits system. Some claimants of disability living allowance say they're losing out after being reassessed. But the DWP says more people are now receiving the higher rate of support than before the changes were brought in. The Scottish Government is about to take control of social security, and as Ian Hamilton reports, it says it will take a different approach.
Hi Maureen.
Hi Ian.
Ian Hamilton, BBC. Hi. Maureen has been on disability benefits for 25 years.
I can't walk too far. It restricts me for a lot of things that I can do in the house, showering and basically getting about.
She's currently been reassessed by the Department of Work and Pensions as she's transferred from disability living allowance to personal independent payments. The transition has been tough. You had your letter in for PIP, the personal independent payment. What's been happening since then?
I went for the assessment and I waited 8 weeks to be told that I had been dropped from 12 points to 10 on the mobility side, which takes my car away, and on the care side for getting help I got 6 points instead of 8, so I didn't qualify for anything.
The Department of Work and Pensions told me that under PIP, over a quarter of claimants are now receiving the highest rate of support, compared with 15% under DLA. Anyone who disagrees has the right to appeal. The Scottish Social Security Minister says that they want to have a fairer system when they take over.
What's clear just now is that that whole procedure that people need to go through with the lengthy application form, that you can only access digitally, which for many folks makes it very difficult. The medical assessments conducted in assessment centres, which are costly, all of that I think is unnecessary in the system that we can design, which will still be evidence-based in terms of medical evidence and social care evidence.
Disability campaign groups welcome the Scottish Government proposals, but are concerned about the timescale.
We would like cross-party agreement, all parties to call on Westminster to implement a moratorium on reassessments in Scotland until such time as we have power over the system. But secondly, to put into place a system whereby if a disabled person could demonstrate through medical evidence that their impairment hasn't improved or has remained the same, that the government should step in and mitigate those cuts.
Maureen, over the next few years, the Scottish Government are going to be taking control over DLA and PIP. What would you like them to do differently?
They can't treat everybody the same. Be a wee bit more compassionate, speak to people, try to understand what's going on and what's wrong with them. Take a bit more time and at least treat them as if they're human.
The Scottish Government have been criticised for not introducing welfare powers sooner. They say they want to get it right, and that takes time. Ian Hamilton, reporting Scotland.
Exports of single malt Scotch whisky topped £1 billion for the first time last year. The United States remained the biggest market by value, but France was the biggest by volume, and there was a significant increase in the amount bought by India. Police Scotland say plans to double the penalty for driving whilst using a mobile phone or tablet will come into force in Scotland on March the 1st. The Department of Transport announced last year it was planning to increase the points from 3 to 6 and the fine from £100 to £200 across the UK. Well, now let's take a look at other stories from across the country. Edinburgh is set to benefit from a jobs boost from the company Amazon. It's creating 5,000 full-time jobs throughout the UK, and an undisclosed number will be in the capital. A 25-year-old man has appeared in court accused of causing a major fire in Dundee's dock area. Dean Yates from Forfar is alleged to have started the blaze at a water pumping station last Thursday. He made no plea or declaration and was released on bail. Fishing access should not be traded away during the Brexit talks. That's the message industry leaders in Shetland delivered to Scotland's Rural Affairs Secretary Fergus Ewing as he announced public funding for the sector on a visit to the islands.
The signs are that the UK government seems to be ready to trade away permanent access, to trade away that sea of opportunity as part of a wider Brexit negotiations, and that they seem to be ready to sacrifice the European market, which is so important. 80% of the fish processed here go to Europe.
There's concern school children on Mull could face lengthy journeys for dental treatment when an island dentist retires at the end of this month. NHS Highland has re-advertised for a dentist to take over from Chris Price, who also drives the island's mobile surgery. But it's feared that when he leaves, there'll no longer be a dental van on Mull. Sunborough Airport in Shetland has been refurbished at a cost of £7.8 million. Transport Minister Hamza Yousaf unveiled a specially commissioned wooden bench to mark the occasion. Improvements include larger security screening areas and upgrades to the main terminal building.
For the last, I suppose, 2.5, 3 years, we've invested a little over £23 million in the Sunborough facility, and it's very, very important for the island, for the community, and now for the oil industry that we support also.
A project combining biophysics and mathematics is challenging existing theories about some of the most important cells in our bodies. Researchers at Heriot-Watt University believe it could have implications for future treatment of diseases like diabetes. This from our science correspondent, Kenneth MacDonald.
If you're well, this is going on inside you right now. It's a cell of the kind that creates the hormone insulin or the brain chemical serotonin. The moving dots are vesicles, bubbles that carry those substances to where they're needed. But until now, there was something wrong with the picture.
Most of biology
knows actually for sure that these things move on railroads, and so we can see them moving around inside the cell. When they get to the cell surface, though, what we saw is we couldn't find these tracks or these railroads anymore. So it really seemed to us like there was something missing.
This is setting off 100 different vesicles from one place in the cell.
What the researchers found was that on the cell's surface, the vesicles weren't following tracks, they were avoiding molecules instead. That took more than biology. It needed a lot of advanced maths.
What we've shown happens is that these vesicles will then move between the valleys of these other molecules, and they'll do so with some randomness.
It took 7 years of treating the cells, looking through some of the world's most powerful microscopes and building a mathematical model using enormous amounts of data. That meant maths and biology had to speak the same language.
That's probably one of the biggest challenges, I think, of my PhD. I've learnt a whole new language dealing with working with mathematicians, and I think Gabriel probably feels the same way.
The findings have implications for medicine and more.
If you have diabetes or certain neurological conditions, for example, something's probably gone wrong with the movement of these cargo in these vesicles inside your cells, and we really don't know what. What our new work gives us is a really strong, correct starting point to try to investigate this in the future.
This approach is an approach that's not only going to be used, not just for this model, not just in biology. In fact, it's an approach that is going to be used both in finance, in astronomy, all over the place.
What this research shows is that mathematics underpins all of the rest of science. In this case, it's helping us look at things that even the most powerful microscopes can't see. Kenneth MacDonald, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Sport now, and Edinburgh Rugby have appointed a new head coach. He's the former England international and Leicester coach Richard Cockerell, and he'll start his new job in the summer as the club try to improve their fortunes. Andy Burke has more.
This has been an all too familiar scene for Edinburgh fans. Defeat to Leinster at the weekend, leaving them 9th in the league. Despite a European quarter-final tie ahead, this season, like so many others in recent times, has failed to ignite. They're hoping this man can change all of that. Richard Cockerell played 27 times for England. He enjoyed great success as coach of Leicester, winning 3 Premiership titles and leading them to a European Cup final. He left Welford Road earlier this season and is now a consultant at the French giants Toulon. Given Edinburgh's struggles in recent seasons, the powers that be here at Murrayfield were keen to install a coach of proven quality, and they believe the capture of Richard Cockerell represents a major coup for Scottish rugby.
This is a big statement of our intent and of our ambition. I think, as I say, we all recognise where we want this club to go, and we want it to be a successful club and emulate and surpass where Glasgow have been over the course of the past few years.
Exciting appointment, a great appointment for Edinburgh. They have an underperforming group of players just now. They need somebody that can put a rocket under them and make them perform better. He is the man that can do that.
Edinburgh's form under acting head coach Duncan Hodge has been inconsistent, but he will remain at the club to work with the new man in charge.
It's great that Richard Cockerell's been brought in the sense that he's a real experienced coach. He's won at the highest level at Clubland, and I'm sure both him and Hodgie together will be a good mix. So from that point of view, I think it's a good thing.
So an appointment to excite the Edinburgh fans and a big challenge for Cockerell to get the club back on track. Andy Burke, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Well, let's get the weather forecast now from Kozer.
Thank you, Jackie. Good evening to you all. Now, it was quite a blustery day indeed. Very windy out there, but it was also quite mild, especially during the course of the morning. Temperatures reached 15 Celsius for Lucas, but by the afternoon, it was colder for all of us. And to end the day, some lovely spells of sunshine. This very pretty picture sent in from one of our weather watchers in Perth and Kinross. And as we head into the evening, there will be some clear spells, especially for central and eastern areas, but also some showers continuing. These across the northwest, and again, they could be quite wintry up over the tops of the hills, but elsewhere largely dry, clearer skies, and the winds will tend to ease for a time across most parts of the mainland. Now, temperatures dipping to around 5 or 6 Celsius, so colder compared to last night, and perhaps for some rural areas in the sheltered east, dipping close to freezing, maybe even a touch of frost. Tomorrow morning then, a lot of dry weather to start across more central and eastern areas with some spells of sunshine, but across the northwest in particular, thicker cloud Outbreaks of rain heavy and persistent for a time and across the west coast too, and strengthening southwesterly winds. So if you're heading out around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it will be quite wet for the Northern Isles, the far north, some persistent heavy bursts here north of the Great Glen and across the west coast as well. Further towards the east, it will be drier and cloudier though by the afternoon, and temperatures reaching around 10 to 11 Celsius, so 1 or 2 degrees lower compared to today. It's tomorrow evening, quite a wet evening in store as that rain band moves further towards the east and the winds start to strengthen, perhaps even touching severe gale force for the far north, the Northern Isles, gusts reaching up to 70 miles per hour. As we look ahead then for Wednesday, quite a blustery start to the day. Some of those showers could be quite wintry, even down to lower levels, some sleety conditions perhaps, but sunny spells around it and temperatures on the cooler side, back to average for the time of year, 6 to 8 Celsius. But as we look ahead to Thursday, there's a lot of uncertainty about this. A deep area of low pressure is likely to head towards us, bringing with it the prospect of some snow, perhaps for southern Scotland and northern England. But like I say, there is a lot of uncertainty about this. The wind's coming in from the north, so it will be colder for all of us. The best of any drier, brighter weather likely across the north. We will, of course, keep you updated. That's your forecast.
Thank you, Cozo. Now a reminder of tonight's main news. Cancer patients from the most deprived communities in Scotland are up to 98% more likely to die from the illness than those from affluent areas, depending on the type of cancer they have. That's the warning from Macmillan Cancer Support, which says there needs to be better awareness of screening in poorer parts of the country. The House of Lords has begun debating the bill which will pave the way for the start of Brexit. The legislation passed the Commons with no amendments, but the government doesn't have a majority in the Lords. Opposition and crossbench peers are seeking guarantees about the rights of citizens from other EU countries living in Britain. 2 senior officials have resigned from UKIP in Merseyside, claiming that senior party figures have shown crass insensitivity about the Hillsborough disaster. The party's leader and their candidate in Thursday's Stoke Central by-election, Paul Nuttall, has admitted that claims he'd lost close personal friends in the disaster were inaccurate. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'm back with the late bulletin, 10:25. Until then, from everyone on the team across the country, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.